This is Andy Gutierrez from StarWars.com, and you are listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z. This is the podcast you're looking for.
This is Ashley Eckstein, Ahsoka Tano from Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to Coffee with Kenobi show number 373. We are your spoiler-free place for Star Wars discussion, analysis, and rhetoric. I'm your host, Dan Z, drinking One Nation coffee out of my Mandalorian coffee mug. It's basically the helmet of Din Djarin. I got it from Shop Disney, and it's a great way to chat and enjoy some One Nation coffee with each and every one of you on today's show. We've got an exciting show, probably one of the most anticipated breakdowns of The Mandalorian that we've ever done, because it's the Jedi, the episode that features the premiere of Ahsoka Tano in live-action Star Wars. So pull up a chair, grab your favorite coffee mug, and let's have some coffee with Kenobi.
So who talks first? You talk first? I talk first.
Joining us today for a cup of coffee to discuss this highly anticipated episode, The Jedi, Chapter 13 of Star Wars The Mandalorian. What an incredible season we've been treated to. So we got to bring in two incredible guests. First, we're going to bring in returning guest of podcast Stardust and so many other things, Mr. Dennis Keithley.
Hey, Dan. It's so great to be back on Coffee with Kenobi. I'm really looking forward to discussing this episode.
I am too. So we're excited to have you on, of course, again, Dennis. I was just on Dennis's show not too recently talking about the Star Wars book, which was great fun. I listened to that show the other day. It was fun. I love what you and Jay do over there.
Well, thank you very much. We had a great time talking to you about that, and we've gotten a lot of positive feedback about it. So thanks again for joining us.
My pleasure. Joining us also today, this is her first time on Coffee with Kenobi, but she is certainly no stranger to Star Wars fans, Marvel fans, pretty much anybody who likes anything awesome knows our guest here. This is Tessa Smith. Tessa is from Mama's Geeky and so many other things. Tessa, welcome to Coffee with Kenobi.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here today and to talk about a pretty epic episode as well.
Yeah, an extremely epic episode. So the way we're going to do this, we'll all give a letter grade and then we'll defend our answers throughout the show. But I'm going to ask you all, for both of you, for a letter grade and sort of an overall opinion of the episode. And then before we start breaking it down, I'm going to ask you a couple of key questions about the episode. It'll make sense when we get to it, but I just think there's important things we need to talk about before we break it down. So Tessa, let's start with you. Give us sort of an overview of your reactions to this episode, and what letter grade would you give it?
Okay, geez. Well, I knew it was going to be great when I knew Dave Filoni was a part of it. So I was very excited. It exceeded all expectations, and I gotta give it an A. I have to.
All right, fair enough. Dennis, what about you?
So last time I was talking to you about The Mandalorian was also Dave Filoni's last episode from season 1. And I thought that episode was fine, but this was far superior. It was much better storytelling. I have a few minor quibbles with it, and overall I'm going to give it an A-.
All right. So even now when I'm talking, I don't know what I'm going to give this thing letter-wise. I have struggled in a very good way with this episode for a lot of reasons, which we'll get to. I thought it was beautifully done. I thought it was beautifully shot. I thought it was very exciting, and it gave us some important aspects of the mythos. Plus, it brought Ahsoka Tano to live action. So I'm going to try to just look at it objectively. Now, I'm going to give it an A as well. So, all right. So before we break it down, and I give an explanation to my rather cryptic response a few moments ago, Dennis, I'm going to ask all of you, and I'll weigh in on this too. What did you think of Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka Tano?
It was a little bit of a shock to the system. We all love Ashley Eckstein. She's personified Ahsoka for so many years, and she's been so great to the fans. And we're used to different people playing our characters in Star Wars, whether it's James Arnold Taylor taking over the role of Obi-Wan for Ewan McGregor in the Clone Wars, or Alden Ehrenreich taking over Han Solo for Harrison Ford. But still, admittedly, there's just something different about someone taking over the role of Ahsoka. After I watched this episode a couple of times, I really was able to relax with her representation, and I liked what she did quite a bit. I got a chance to read, the Vanity Fair article that Anthony Breznican did.
Yeah.
And she talked a little bit about going back and watching all those episodes that featured Ahsoka. and learning the way that Ahsoka talked and spoke. And I could see that the episode. And it's hard to capture what Ahsoka does in live action compared to what's going on in the Clone Wars. But given the format, I thought she was spectacular.
And Tessa, what about you? And I mean, I know you're a big Star Wars fan and an Ahsoka Tano fan, but did Rosario Dawson's performance work for you, or did it make you wishing you had Ashley Eckstein?
So I really was upset when I first heard of the rumored casting from way back when. I was, why are they not doing Ashley? I mean, I get it, really, but at the same time, Ashley is Ahsoka, and I adore her. And again, like you said, she's always been so great to the fans. And why are they removing her from this? And so, but as soon as I saw her, the second I saw Ahsoka in live action, I went, okay, all right. Okay. And I was nervous waiting for her to speak, to be honest with you. I was waiting to hear how she was going to sound. And, you know, I mean, like Dennis said, you could hear it. And I was like, okay, I mean, I'm kind of here for it. And after my third, fourth time watching it, I was like, okay, all right, I can accept her in this role. It's not Ashley, but you know what? I mean, it worked for me. It did.
So for me, this is a tough one for me. So I'm Tessa. I'm assuming you probably talked to Ashley before too, and Dennis, you have as well. I wouldn't say that Ashley Eckstein is a close personal friend, but she's definitely a solid acquaintance. You know, enough so that, you know, we've emailed back and forth, and when I see her, she'll say, "Hi, Dan," and give me a hug, and she's just a very, very gracious person. And I've always been struck by her sincerity and her legitimacy, like as a person. I mean, we've all met people in this business, and we've seen a lot of different sides of a lot of different aspects of fandom, of Hollywood, of all kinds of stuff. And she is about as good as it gets. And not only is it that, but to me, yes, she voiced Ahsoka Tano for 12 years. And yes, this is a business. Rosario Dawson, for the record, is a fabulous actress. I thought she embodied Ahsoka. I mean, her movements, her grace, her gravitas, the way she carried herself, the way she rolled out her palm and extended her finger to toss the top of that shifter to Grogu, the way she would fold her arms, the way she would make certain expressions and smile and smirk. That was Ahsoka. Like that was an incredible way to take an animated character and bring it onto live action. That all being said, it still is not Ahsoka to me. To me, the soul of Ahsoka Tano is Ashley Eckstein. And maybe that's an immature way for me to look at it. And maybe it is. And yes, I accepted Alden Ehrenreich right away as Han Solo. James Earl Taylor is an excellent example of Obi-Wan Kenobi that you said, Dennis. But for some reason, there's just something about Ashley and the way she embodies the spirit of what it means to be Ahsoka Tano that I don't know if I'm ever going to get over. And you know what really made it extra challenging for me is a couple episodes before that, seeing Bo-Katan, right? Mm-hmm. The actress who plays Bo-Katan, of course, not only is she Katie Sackhoff, the voice of Bo-Katan in Rebels and Clone Wars, but she also was the actor who portrayed her in live action. So it's not like we don't have precedence for it. So I guess I'm just going to have to get over it. I've watched it 3 different times now. It's certainly thrilling. She certainly does a dynamic job, but it's just a hard leap for me. So if either of you can talk me off the ledge, I'd be happy to listen.
Listen, I mean, you're not wrong though. And because I had the same thing, and I think it's just I just had to accept it. But I was upset about Bo-Katan. That made me mad when that happened. I was like, well, then how come we don't have Ashley? But I feel like I have to separate the two. Yeah. She does do a great job.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Dennis, anything?
Oh, you're not wrong to think that way. I can't tell you that at all. I guess for me, I've actually never met Ashley Eckstein. I've been in line twice for it to happen, and just things didn't work out, and it hasn't been something I've been able to do. It's still on my bucket list. But I knew when we started getting these rumors back in the spring that Ahsoka was going to show up and it was going to be portrayed by Rosario Dawson, that this was going to be a challenge for fans, and for all the reasons I said previously. And I guess I've just gotten used to, over the years, these things changing, and I've been just open to it. And it seems to me, Dan, that you would love to have seen Ashley in the role, but it's not like it destroyed the episode for you. So
Right.
I think you're doing fine
Right.
to play your armchair psychologist here, but
Yes.
I can't tell you you're wrong.
Well, and I honestly think I wish that I didn't know in advance that it was going to be called the Jedi, because I'd found out through the grapevine that it was going to be called the Jedi, and so I was expecting to see Ahsoka Tano in the episode. I wish that didn't happen. I wish that I could have been surprised like I was when I first saw Bo-Katan, or when I first saw a Krayt Dragon or Boba Fett's armor in the first episode of season 2. And I think that I think that adrenaline would have probably carried me through the first showing. No, were either of you completely caught off guard by this, or did you expect to see Ahsoka in this episode?
I expected it if right from when I knew that Dave was directing, just because I figured he would be the one to bring her in. And of course, we had already heard her name. And I did hear that it was going to be called the Jedi ahead of time, but I did not expect her in the first 2 minutes. So I was a little caught off guard. I thought we'd have to wait 10, 15 minutes before we saw her. And no, they gave her to us immediately.
They did. So let's just jump right into the episode itself. The opening sequence, it's very dark. It's haunting. This forest, which we learned from Bresnikan's article, was inspired by the California wildfires in a way, sort of amused to that. And right away, we get an action sequence, and we get to see Ahsoka Tano in live action for the first time. Dennis, talk about her initial appearance leading up to the gate when she talks to the magistrate.
This caught me off guard because I am used, right or wrong, to seeing Ahsoka a little bit more face to face with her enemies, but she was very much taking advantage of her environment. She was using the fog or the smoke or the combination, so I'm not sure exactly what it was, to sneak up on people. She was manipulating the environment and then igniting her lightsabers really quickly to dispatch an enemy and then extinguishing them and then moving on. And I was really just kind of thrown off guard by that. That did not seem like the Ahsoka that I just saw in the final story arc of the Clone Wars and in many stories before. But I thought it was a brilliant development in the way that she's become a cunning warrior, and she's learned to take advantage of her environment to overwhelm an enemy that outnumbered her and get up to that gate and make her point.
And Tessa, you, of course, are famous for your reaction videos. And you have a reaction video, don't you, to the first time we get to see Ahsoka. Talk about that opening sequence for us.
Yeah, I do. I actually watched it live, and then I put that up after, because everyone was like, no, we need just a clip of this with the video. And I just, like I said, I really expected a solid at least 10 minutes. I wasn't expecting to see her right away. So I was just so overwhelmed and overcome with emotions. I think I definitely teared up. I was screaming. I did not expect to see it. And so immediately I knew I'm going to have to watch this episode again as soon as I finish it, because I don't think I took in everything that happened in that first action sequence. I was just too, oh my God, she's here. Okay, she's here. All right. She's here now. I got to hear her talk. What's she going to sound like? How's this going to go down? But it was just, I was overwhelmed and completely overcome with emotions, good emotions.
Yeah, the stunt work, the choreography, the way that she uses the Force to create a sound behind her, very similar to Obi-Wan Kenobi in A New Hope. The trees, cutting the trees in half, taking care of these different enemies. The way the camera speeds around, the use of fog, like you mentioned earlier, Dennis, were all really captivating. And I'm realizing as I'm talking to both of you, as I'm sort of processing this entire episode, I think if there's my major quibble with this was I had to go against my own expectations, because when you know you're going to see a character, and I've said this before, I said this on Facebook Live, I said it on Coffee with Kenobi over the years, but Ahsoka is one of my top 5 favorite Star Wars characters, period. I adore Ahsoka. I adore what she's about. I think her journey is fantastic and very inspiring and very full of pathos. So you finally get to see her live. And personally, I would have liked to have seen a much slower burn. I think it would have been really super cool if we got to see all this fighting and then the build up to the front gate, and then we get the reveal of her face. But it just kind of happens right away. Would either of you have liked the slow burn, or do you think it was paced correctly? I mean, I do want to state that I love Filoni, and I think obviously he is the master. But this was a choice, and I would love to know what that choice was.
Mentioning it, I think it would have been kind of cool, more suspenseful.
Yes. Because we've waited 12 years. Why not wait a few more minutes?
Yeah, I was expecting to see her later in the episode, like Tessa was suggesting. I thought she was going to be kind of an end of the episode reveal and then show up in the following episode. I knew she was coming for the same reasons Tessa said. But Dave Filoni was doing this episode. I didn't know the title in advance. But when the episode starts and all of a sudden you see the white lightsabers and then it's very clear that we're looking at Ahsoka, it was like the Band-Aid got yanked off all at once right there. And so that was a surprise. I guess I'm fine with it. I mean, my quibble with the episode comes a little bit later with her in a non-action scene, but we haven't got there yet. But it worked for me, but it certainly was not at all what I was expecting.
So then we go up and we find out why she's there. She needs to figure out, she has some information that she wants from the magistrate. There's this great little showdown. It's got a very much sort of a gothic horror Old West motif that's happening. But then it transitions pretty quickly as Ahsoka runs into the forest, or actually walks into the forest. And we get to see Din Djarin and the child, because right now it's just the child, because that's where we're at in the episode. And Tessa, I mean, obviously we're all parents, but Tessa, you're a mom, and you've had little ones, and you see the Mandalorian with the child, and then there's a bit of a interplay there that I think leads up to a very, very sweet payoff at the end of the episode. But talk about their bond just through that sequence. And what do you think Dave Filoni was trying to say there?
I mean, just as we've seen through ever since the first season, I mean, their bond is getting stronger and stronger. And it's just, he seems like a father to the child, which I love. All sorts of things, even disciplining him, when he tells him, like, don't play with that, don't do this, don't do that. And I just, that scene, I felt like I sort of predicted right then. I was like, no, he's going to try to leave the child with Ahsoka, and it better not happen. And I thought, we were either getting kind of a goodbye coming up, or, a turnaround and, you guys have a strong bond, I'm not taking him away type of thing.
It felt particularly inspiring. Not necessarily, I don't know if inspiring is right, but it felt particularly emotional. Mm-hmm. Because I think we know Dennis, at least at that point in the episode, that he actually sees an ending to this journey that he's taken with the child, and he knows they're going to separate. And sometimes our emotions will play out into random frustrations that really aren't that prolific, but we play them up more because we're dealing with other emotions internally. And I feel like we see that with Din Djarin here.
I think you're right. Some of the things I noticed over the course of this episode was that he came up with new affectionate nicknames for the child, including Buddy. And then he reached out to him in ways and was protective in ways. He's always been kind of protective, but he just evolved a little bit. He's not a perfect father. I mean, none of us are, but he's farther away than a lot because he's been thrust into this role. But there certainly is a conflict with him in which he wants to look out for this child. He wants to protect the child, but he also kind of yearns to get back to his old life of the bounty hunter, kind of being responsible and answering to no one but himself. And I kind of think he was very conflicted over the course of this episode about what was going to happen.
Really interesting. See, I never got any sort of a vibe that he was conflicted with wanting to join his old life. I felt it was more like a resignation that he's a very different person and he doesn't want to move on. At least that's just sort of how I interpret it. But I think that's going to come up a little bit later in the episode. So he goes to the front. He goes to the front and we meet two new characters in the Star Wars universe. And when I first saw this, I was scrambling through my brain to think about different characters in the Clone Wars and had we seen them before. But we haven't. We had two new characters. We have Diana Lee Inosanto. She plays the magistrate, named Morgan Elsbeth. And then Michael Biehn portrays a character named Lang. So Michael Biehn, is that how you pronounce the name, Tessa? Am I right?
I think so.
And so he's got a bit of a legacy in fandom, and I had never heard of him until this episode, but what is he famous for?
Terminator, Aliens are the two that come to mind.
Okay. It's just been a while, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Now, Diana is really cool because she actually works in Hollywood as with stunts, right? Isn't that her background?
Yeah, I think so. I read that and I thought that was really cool. And I think it's also kind of obvious too.
Hmm.
It made sense when I read that. I was like, oh, that makes total sense.
The way she would hold that spear, I mean, that's not something you can learn in a couple weeks. I mean, there's a grace there and a danger. She's clearly a menacing character. She has no qualms with using human beings as pawns. She's not opposed to torture. Doesn't seem to bother her in the least. There's definitely something going on behind the surface. So eventually, Din Djarin meets them, and then they have this great conversation where we learn something interesting about Beskar. And so, Dennis, talk about that conversation between the magistrate and Din Djarin when she hires him.
So she doesn't know why he's there, and he doesn't reveal it, that he's there looking for this Jedi, and it just so happens that they've both got a commonality there. He's looking for Ahsoka. She's trying to get rid of Ahsoka. And so she offers him a job because she's assuming that he is a typical bounty hunter who's there to make money. And Beskar is something that's, of course, important to the Mandalorians. And so she offers up this pure Beskar spear if he will go out into the burnt forest and kill Ahsoka. And he's very clever with his dialogue. He says a couple times that he's expensive and that he doesn't come cheap, but he never says, I'm going to do it. He just keeps reinforcing that I'm expensive. I have a high rate. And she just keeps laying on the flattery there. That's probably a bit strong to say it that way, but she keeps offering him this up. And then eventually we see him leaving the city to go look for Ahsoka.
Which of course he does. And yeah, I love that. I feel like this is the episode that we will probably look back on and say, no, the Mandalorian isn't like an archetypal rogue type character. He's actually a good guy. He may be a little rough around the edges, but I don't think there's anything gray about him anymore. I think he's fully ensconced in what it means to be good, because while he still has no qualms with, killing to save his life or to create a sense of justice, I feel like he's doing this because he wants to help the child, but he also wants to put an end to this oppression. Tessa, did you get that impression as well?
I did. It's so crazy to me to think back on his arc, because at the beginning, like you said, he was very like, is he gray? Is he a bad guy? Like, where is he? Is he just out for himself? Kind of like Boba Fett, right? I could never really say, is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? He's kind of just a guy. And in this one, I really felt like he comes to Ahsoka. They have that little fight, but you just could tell like he was never gonna I don't think he ever even entertained the idea of hurting her. Whereas someone who is a gray area would have at least certainly entertained it. Well, then what would happen with the child, and how would I do this? And I don't think it was even an option for him.
That's a great point. And you mentioned the fight. Let's just talk about this the sequence where Ahsoka Tano meets Din Djarin. A really, really great sequence. And I feel like the only time in this series where the Mandalorian is going up against someone where he legitimately is aware that he is out of his league. And I don't feel like we can ever say that with everyone he's fought or the amount of people that he's fought at the exact same time. But Tessa, to me, when I'm watching that sequence, which is a great, well-choreographed sequence, especially when she has that cable around her and she flips over the top and then pulls him up. I mean, there's just a lot of great stuff there, but I very much feel like he had no chance against her.
No, none. And he didn't even try to. I don't think he knew he was outmatched, and he's just waiting for his moment to say, hey, I'm supposed to be looking for you, Are
there any other things that jump out in that sequence, the fight sequence, that you wanted to talk about?
I just absolutely loved it. I was hoping we would see them go against each other. I wasn't sure if we would see that or not, if he would be able to spit out his words first, but I'm glad they gave us a little taste. And like you said, they definitely showed that Ahsoka would easily take him down. And but I'm glad we got a little tease of what it would be like to see them go against each other, even if it was not in Mando's favor.
Well, it's really only the second time we've seen a Jedi fight against the Mandalorian. I mean, I guess in live action, I'm thinking of Attack of the Clones per se, as far as just a one-on-one a one-on-one fight. And it is really cool, Dennis, I thought, to see, and we see this earlier in the episode, but that Beskar is actually something that can block a lightsaber, which is pretty crazy. But talk about the action sequence from your point of view.
This was a Dave Filoni hallmark. It had his fingerprints all over it. As soon as I saw Ahsoka give that smirk when she got wrapped up in the cable and then jumped over the branch to kind of break the hold that Din had on her, that seemed something straight out of Clone Wars Rebels. And I knew we were dealing with a Dave Filoni property if I hadn't known that he was directing and writing this episode already. I liked it quite a bit. And I agree with what you both said, that he knew that he wasn't going to win that fight. He'd heard about these Jedi, these sorcerers from the Armorer, and he took what he heard to heart in that regard. And so he used the flamethrower to back her off, and then he used the rope. He was going for, you could argue the flamethrower, of course, is a lethal option, but he used it in a non-lethal way. Same with the cable when he tried to wrap her up. He was trying to get her to stop and to listen. And finally he pulled his pistol, and then he said, Bo-Katan sent me. And he was doing whatever he could to come up with a non-lethal solution to that fight. And it kind of goes along with what we were talking about earlier, this creed he has. We don't know all the details of the creed, but he does have a code of honor, and he's there to help, and he's got a way of handling these type of situations, and it came through right here.
Yeah, it came through glowingly, so that they make a truce. And I mean, it's not even really that much of one, because what really prevents everything, he mentions Bo-Katan, he invokes her name, but it's suddenly, and my son had said to me before, Daddy, what do you think will happen when Ahsoka meets the child? And I said, I think they're going to be able to sense each other because they're both very powerful in the Force. And she says, I hope you're here to talk about him. And then all of a sudden the camera changes and we see the child, and they interact. And then we're treated this absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous sequence. And even the lighting in the background, the sun is kind of a little bit more clear than it has been in the episode to this point. And the child and Ahsoka have this connection. They don't talk, but they are communicating very, very profoundly. And Ahsoka even says that. And we learn a lot in a very, very small amount of time. There's so much to unpack here. We could easily spend the entire episode just on this. But Tessa, we'll start with you. Grogu. What do you think?
I know. I don't know. I guess I wasn't, I don't know. I thought for sure we would end up with his name. We've been told we're going to hear it sooner than later. And I thought he's going to meet Ahsoka. And first of all, I just got to say that whole sequence, I could have watched it for another full minute. Just them looking at each other and the facial expressions and everything. I thought it was so powerful. There was so much in a scene where no words are said. That's just crazy. And then I love how she just casually slipped his name in there, like no big deal. And, they're just like, oh, that's his name. Oh, okay.
Dennis, for me, like Tessa just mentioned, this scene was so beautiful. And there was incredible puppetry. There was wonderful acting by Rosario Dawson. The interaction that they had, there was so much warmth and empathy and like love there, just like this connection between these two beings who are much more similar than they are different because of their powerful connection to the Force. They both gone through trauma. We learn that the child grew up on Coruscant, had several masters, and then was taken from the temple after the Empire basically took over. We don't know who did that. We know that there's a lot of darkness in the child's memory. But for my money, the way that they reveal casually and organically the name Grogu, it felt so dynamic and was a very, very rich way to say. I mean, it's much better than just some casual reference or you pick up a piece of paper. I don't know. It's just there was something very powerful and poetic about that.
Yeah, I agree. Because Grogu ends up having kind of an interesting relationship with Ahsoka here. He's finally got someone that he can communicate with, because all he can do is coo and whine if you read the subtitles, if you're watching the show with that. And then he's got someone who can understand what he's thinking, and we come up with this history. I was expecting to get the child's name bestowed upon him, not necessarily from him.
Yes.
Over the course of the episode, the series, and so that was a surprise to me that he knew his name, and I love the way he reacted to it. Every single time Din Djarin would say it, Grogu's ears would perk up, and he'd turn right to him, and yes, what do you want? I love that. I thought that was an absolutely fantastic reaction. They did a great job with him in season 1 as a puppet. They've taken it to another level in season 2 with his reactions, the way he looks and talks and reacts to things. But I really found it interesting that he took an active role in kind of suppressing his force powers, as Ahsoka explained it, in order to protect himself. And ultimately it didn't work, because we know he was collected by those Nikto and then ultimately retrieved by Din Djarin there. But he seems so innocent, and he seems so new in the world, even though he's a 50-year-old infant. But there's a little bit of wisdom that he's been given here, that he understands that he was in danger and that he had to protect himself and look after himself in that way, which I found remarkable.
Well, and like Din Djarin at one point says, he doesn't understand, and she says he does, just very, very matter of fact, and almost with a bit of joy and whimsy, because the Grogu is very much sort of playing possum sometimes, and trying to kind of go back to a state of innocence when things are much more pure, and there's that safety that is there with Din Djarin. But what do the three of you think of the actual name Grogu? Tessa, what do you think about that? My son instantly adopted it. And for the rest of the weekend, every time we talk about the child, it was always, "Daddy, it's Grogu." He was always correcting me, which I kind of got a kick out of. But did you like the name? I mean, there's been a lot of mixed reactions, but what do you think about it?
It's so funny you say that, because my daughters were the same way. We have several stuffed animals, and I'll be like, "Get the child." They'll be like, no, it's not the child anymore. It's Grogu. Just accept it. And I'm like, okay. I don't mind the name. I think it's all right. It's kind of cute. I feel like it's fitting. It's very Yoda-ish, where it's a short little name. It's all right. I'm probably still going to continue to call him the child, just because first I called him Baby Yoda, then I changed it to the child, and it's going to take a hot minute for me to just call him Grogu, but I don't mind it.
Dennis?
Yeah, it's been hard to break myself of the habit of calling him the child, because he's got a name now, and names are powerful and they should be respected. But I couldn't have picked the name, and I'm not sure what I was expecting. That wasn't it, but it's fine. We have a doll of the child sitting on our mantle with a Santa hat on it right now, and everyone's been walking by saying "Merry Christmas, Grogu" for the past couple days, and so we've gotten over that. And I guess I'm indifferent. It seems like a perfectly good Star Wars name. It just, after Yoda and Yaddle, I was expecting probably something with a Y, if anything.
The fact that we learn the child's name not because it's bestowed or given, but because it's already in place and Din Djarin discovered. So I thought that was really powerful and a very important thing, that, look, I've already got an identity. I'm already someone. And the reaction you both mentioned to when Grogu hears his name spoken from the Mandalorian, the way he lights up, and his ears, his posture, his expressions, those beautiful little coos that he makes. I thought it was so beautiful. Like, you could almost get choked up as a father, because one thing that the Mandalorian does really, really well, better than anything in Star Wars to this point, is it portrays a positive relationship between father and son. Yeah. We certainly don't have that in the original trilogy until the very, very end. And even that, come on, we're being generous. And then in the sequel trilogy, there certainly isn't one there that is good. In fact, it ends with the son committing murder. So that's obviously a big problem too. But in this, we just see mutual love, respect, admiration, and in a constant sort of a motion towards trying to understand each other. And isn't that really what parenthood is all about anyway? I thought this captured it so beautifully. And the fact that we're able to feel kind of sorry for the child because of whatever he might have experienced, that was very, very important. But we don't have a lot of time to wait on that, because now they've got a new plan. Once Ahsoka realizes why the Mandalorian is there, they hired me to kill you, but I didn't accept, I didn't answer them. They come up with a plan, and they're going to basically go in and they're going to try to take care of business. So let's go ahead and take a really quick break. When we come back, we'll discuss the second half of The Jedi. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
This is Vanessa Marshall, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
Now is not the time to overpay for razors at the drugstore. Harry's knows sometimes it's better to stay inside. That's why they ship directly to you so you can experience the quality of Harry's shave in just a few days from the convenience of your own home. And what I love the most about Harry's blades, besides what I just mentioned, is the fact that they are incredibly strong, powerful, durable blades. I get a great shave out of it. The price is awesome. I love the scent of the shave gel. And again, the convenience factor, not having to worry about anything other than just having it delivered to your home, is just so easy. You can join that, and the 10 million who have tried Harry's claim your special trial offer by going to harrys.com/CWK family. Harry's is a return to the essentials. Quality, durable blades at a fair price, just $2 per blade. They've cut out the middleman, manufacturing blades in their German blade factory that's been honing precision blades for a century, which means you get incredibly high-quality blades at factory-direct prices. And as I mentioned, Harry's is super convenient. Blade refills are delivered directly to your door on your schedule with or without a subscription. And you can feel good about your purchase. 100% quality guarantee. If you don't love your shave, let them know and they'll give you a full refund. And here's something really, really nice. It means a lot to me. 1% of proceeds are set aside for nonprofit organizations devoted to helping provide access to better health care for men and veterans. Listeners of Coffee with Kenobi can redeem their Harry's trial set at harrys.com/CWK family. You'll get a weighted ergonomic handle for a firm grip, 5-blade razor with a lubricating strip and trimmer blade, rich lathering shave gel with aloe to keep your skin hydrated, and a travel blade cover to keep your razor dry and easy to grab on the go. Go to harrys.com/CWK family to start shaving better today. MEI and Mouse Fan Travel is your one-stop shop for your vacation needs and your plans to Walt Disney World, Disneyland, or the cruise lines. Travel looks much different now than it did a couple of months ago, and with the opening of Walt Disney World and soon, hopefully, the opening of Disneyland, you need a place to go where you can trust, and they will help you figure out and navigate all the different circumstances and guidelines that Disney has put out for you. And I can say that we had our vacation modified, and as soon as dates were announced, MEI contacted me directly to help me reschedule, which is exactly what I was hoping to do. So if you are interested in rescheduling your vacation or want to try to plan a Walt Disney World, Disneyland vacation, or anywhere else you want to go on the planet, be sure to contact MEI and Mouse Fan Travel at www.coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefan-travel. Their signature service and expert advice will help you maximize your vacation time and dollar, and they will help you figure out all the different changes and modifications going on at the Disney theme parks. They are amazing, and I can tell you, honestly, from the bottom of my heart, the peace of mind that Becky Menken and the crew at MEI and Mouse Fan Travel have given me is invaluable. If you're interested at all, again, go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefan-travel. We are back, and Tessa, we're gonna start with you. They have a new plan now. They're gonna go in. They're gonna be a team. I love when the Mandalorian says a Jedi and a Mandalorian teaming up. They'll never would have believed it or whatever. I thought that was really great. But that whole action sequence, going inside, Ahsoka jumping onto the roof, it's just so much fun here. So exciting.
Yeah, that whole scene was so great. And I love a good action scene. And I've said all along that The Mandalorian it's samurai Western, and I love it. And we get so much of that in this one. I really felt like, especially, towards the end of that part and I'm skipping ahead probably, but when Ahsoka and the magistrate, when they go face to face, it feels very samurai Western and just amazing. And you've got Din out there with Lang, and they're just like staring at each other, waiting to see what happens beyond the doors there. And it's just, oh man, that whole thing was so good. Just from the beginning of them, Ahsoka, like you said, jumping the roof, getting over there, and then just the battles there, just face-offs, just two groups of people just looking at each other. Oh, that was so good.
Yeah, the samurai / Western thing is exactly spot on. And we've been told since day one that that's kind of what it's going to be like, but it really, really is on display here. There's even some some Kill Bill vibes with the showdown, or the way that when the magistrate and Ahsoka Tano face one another and they remove their cloaks, very much like Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn against Darth Maul and the Phantom Menace. There's a ton to admire about this part, Dennis.
Yeah, one of my favorite moments of this entire thing was when you were talking about how Ahsoka jumped up there on the roof there at that front gate. She dispatches the soldiers or guards, whatever you want to call them there, and then she slices the bell, the gong, I'm not exactly sure what you call that thing that they were banging on to raise the alarm, in half. And it was like she was signaling to this entire village, liberation is here. Mm-hmm. And the thing goes cascading off and it crashes to the ground. And then she marches up there to the front gates of the interior gates of the keep. And this is one of the best classic parts of Ahsoka. She jumps off on the roof as the soldiers open fire on her when Lang and the magistrate come out, and she starts deflecting the blasts. And that seemed like it was right out of classic episodes of the Clone Wars, the way she would be outnumbered, whether it was at the end of season 5 and she's being pursued by clone troopers and Jedi, or in season 7 when she's being hunted by the clone troopers again, and she's just batting away blast after blast after blast. And it was so expertly done there. And yeah, samurai, very much so, in the way that the city looked, the little stronghold looked, the way that the gates were set up with the bell on top of it, and then the Western feel, of course, when Din Djarin and Lang had their showdown there while Ahsoka and the magistrate were fighting it out. It combined those two genres very, very well.
I'm glad you brought that little sequence up, because the showdown between Lang and Din Djarin, I think, is important, because for the second or third episode in a row, Din Djarin very much takes kind of a back seat to the action. And I feel like we're seeing that more and more and more as this season goes on. That is not necessarily in and of itself a bad thing, but it is something to be aware of. So it's good to get a reminder as an audience. No, Din Djarin may not be Ahsoka Tano, but he's still Din Djarin, and he's still the fastest, gunslinger in the galaxy. So that, I thought that was really, really cool to see, very much a highlight. Then at the end of this, the showdown. Tessa, talk about the showdown between the magistrate and Ahsoka Tano, leading up to the big reveal of who the magistrate's master is.
Yeah, which made me think we had to have seen her before. And like you said, you had to go looking through stuff. And I was like, how have we not seen her? But yeah, just like the way it starts off with them just staring at each other. And let me tell you, I was completely shocked when she disarmed one of Ahsoka's lightsabers. I was not expecting that to happen at all. I just felt like Ahsoka, it humanized her more. You know what I mean? Like, I felt like, okay, she's amazing and she's the best, but like, she got caught up in this and she didn't lose, but I mean, she stumbled. And I actually appreciated that, because I think if they had the whole sequence with Ahsoka just completely winning hands down very quickly, it wouldn't have been as entertaining or suspenseful. We all know Ahsoka's going to win, or assume, I should say. But when she got disarmed, I was like, oh, this is going down. Okay. And then, she just presses her lightsaber up against her and asks where Thrawn is, and my world exploded.
So we actually had a good discussion about this the other night on Facebook Live. But do you feel like they were evenly matched? Do you feel like Ahsoka was playing possum for a while? Or kind of talk about it, because I feel like there's a couple of tonal shifts in the fight.
Yeah, I thought, definitely at first thought she's playing possum. But then when she got disarmed, I was like, would she allow herself to get disarmed? I'm not sure if she would allow herself to become that vulnerable.
That's an interesting perspective. Dennis, what do you think?
Well, earlier in the episode, when she's telling Din Djarin about the magistrate, she says that she was the survivor of a world that was devastated during the Clone Wars, and that she went on to serve the Empire in helping it establish its Imperial Navy. And she's not someone to be underestimated. And so heading into this fight, Ahsoka was aware that Morgan had these abilities and was not someone she could just waltz in there and take out. And so I think there wasn't any real danger of Ahsoka losing this fight, but it was not something she could just take lightly. when it came down to it, given the respect that she had shown for her opponent earlier in the episode.
Right. Yeah, those are good callbacks too, to say, you can't underestimate her. I feel like, I mean, in a one-on-one fight, obviously Ahsoka's going to win this one, 10 out of 10 times. But I feel like there was legitimate tension, there was legitimate peril, and there was a legitimate price. And I almost feel like Ahsoka was almost overly tense. And then when right before she gets disarmed with one of her blades, I said to my son, look at how she's overly swinging. She's being a little bit aggressive. She's kind of losing her control, which is a very un-Jedi-like thing to do. Because she does that, she loses her blades. And then we get that signal, and you mentioned earlier that this is very much a Dave Filoni directed episode. You both have, when Ahsoka flips her blade around and holds it backwards, sort of like katana style, that was when I knew, okay, this fight is going to get over really, really quickly, because this is the Ahsoka we know and love. This is how she fought before she had her two blades. And it's very, very powerful. And plus, there's also a part of me that realizes, look, she may have been holding back a little bit at first, and I do think that she was, but she was also kind of trying to size her up. I still feel like Ahsoka, at the end of the day, is not a cold-blooded killer. She's got some information that she needs, so she has to kind of stretch this out and try to find a weakness, not only in how she is physically as a fighter, the magistrate, I mean, but in trying to get a crack in that internal armor, because clearly she's very loyal to her master. And Tessa, you want to go ahead and let everybody know who the master is?
So it's Thrawn, which is so crazy. And so I haven't read, my husband's actually reading that book right now. And I'm like, okay, give it to me as soon as you're done, because I have not read the book yet.
It's. Are you talking about the sort of the prequel one?
Yeah. I think it's like yep.
Yeah, for sure. Have you read?
Have you read it?
Yeah, I have. Dennis, you?
Oh yeah, it's a fantastic book.
Yeah, that's good. Thrawn is an interesting challenge, but then there are a couple of questions that everybody wants to know. One, so when does this take place in the timeline? I mean, obviously, The Mandalorian is 5 years after Return of the Jedi, but how close is this in proximity to the epilogue of the series finale of Rebels? We don't really know that. Because Thrawn is on the lookout, does that mean Ezra is still out there? I mean, that's certainly something that I'm hoping for. And then ultimately, what do either of you think happened to the magistrate? Do you think she was killed, or do you think she was captured? What do you think happened? What do you think, Dennis?
Well, that would not be a Jedi thing to do. No. And I know Ahsoka will tell you that I'm no Jedi, but I can't see her killing the magistrate in that fashion. I think she would leave it up to the village to decide her fate.
I do too.
Perhaps with some guidance, but I don't see her dispatching the magistrate there.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think I just figured captive, but I bet she would leave it up to the village.
And we keep mentioning Brez's article in Vanity Fair about this, but I very much, even before I read this, I very much felt, look, Ahsoka's more Jedi than probably just about any Jedi we've ever met besides Rey and Qui-Gon Jinn. So she's more poised. She's more in control of her emotions. She's much more on the side of good. There's so many times in her life when she can be powerful and more powerful than she is, but she always chooses service and caring for others and finding a way to get answers, to make things work out for the better for the galaxy and for the people around her. And that's one of the reasons why we love Ahsoka Tano so very much. So at the very, very end, there's this horribly heart-wrenching sequence again, which could easily bring tears to your eyes, especially if you're a parent, where the Mandalorian Din Djarin has to go back to the Razor Crest. He says, I got to go say goodbye. And then the music kind of slows down a little bit, and he walks into the Razor Crest cargo hold, and the child is sleeping in that little hammock thingy, and there's this moment where they're just sitting there together, and the camera pans backwards, and Tessa just rips your heart out.
Oh, it does. And that's when I was watching it and I'm going, he won't, he's not going to leave him. Is he going to leave him? And as a parent, yeah, it's very much like, it's silly because he is 50 years old, but I think about, when you send your kid off to school for the first time or, it's like, is he going to be like, because he knows or thinks anyway, that's what Grogu needs, to be trained and to be with a Jedi. And is that what he's going to do? And it's very much like, okay, go to school and I'll be here when you're done,
Well, and it was mentioned earlier in the episode, Dennis, but Ahsoka says I can't train Grogu because I've seen what happens to the best of us when there's that attachment or that pull to sort of the dark side, and I can't do this. I think between that, but maybe more importantly than that, these two legitimately need each other, and their story together as a team is far from over. I think that's fair to say.
Oh, I agree. I agree with both of you on this. I think, in a way, Ahsoka kind of did Din Djarin a favor by, it may not have been her intent, but by not taking Grogu and training him, he didn't make Din Djarin make that choice to turn over the child when he wasn't ready to do so. My kids are still at home. I haven't had to say goodbye to them yet. That's coming up in a couple of years, but there's a time for that, and Din and Grogu aren't there yet. And so maybe it comes at the end of the season, maybe it's next season, maybe it's the end of the series. I don't know. But at least at this point, I mentioned the pull that I think Din kind of has had over the course of the series to resume his life as a bounty hunter. He did the right thing back in the first season to rescue the child when he realized that he turned him over to the Empire and nothing good was going to come of that. But at the end of the season, the armorer saddled him with his task. And I don't think he was really prepared for that or really wanted that at the time. But since then, he's formed an attachment. Ahsoka mentioned Grogu was attached to Din Djarin, but it works the other way too. And whether he's calling him buddy and always checking out on him, putting a hand on him, and gathering him up after the first episode of the season when those people in the desert attacked and things like that. He's very keenly aware of what's going on with Grogu, and he doesn't always do it right, but what parent does?
And they literally, we didn't talk about this, but they literally play catch in a way. In fact, Major League Baseball's official Twitter account said, let's have a catch, and showed that sequence of Din Djarin and Grogu playing, tossing the ball to each other. That was a very, very powerful moment. Again, that we're kind of going backwards, but Ahsoka trying a different approach. Again, this is why Ahsoka is so great. This is why she's an excellent teacher, because there is no one size fits all as an educator. One thing that works with one student is not going to necessarily work with the next one. And it's no measure of the child's ability or any student's ability. It's more a question of where are they at and who are they connected to. Teaching is about connections. Ahsoka has a beautiful connection with Grogu, but it's not like the Mandalorian has, Din Djarin has with Grogu himself. At the end, she says, there is another way. Again, Ahsoka lets things come to her. That's why Ahsoka's not an anxious person. And Ahsoka's got a lot of reasons to be anxious. But as many bad things have happened to her, she rolls with it. She waits for the Force to guide her, and she does it with patience and calm, and says, there is a way. You can go. And the name of the planet is Escaping by Mo's a classic to fans of the Old Republic.
Python.
It's like that, yeah.
Yes. And there you can go and place Grogu on this. What do they say on the platform, on the step?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like Raiders of the Lost Ark in reverse. And
The Seeing Stone, yeah.
Yeah. And then when you're there, a Jedi, Grogu can choose his path. That was my favorite, maybe one of my favorite parts of the entire episode. Grogu can choose his path. That isn't that the hardest thing as a parent. You gotta get them in the spot where they need to be, where they can choose their own destiny. But it's really, really hard. We definitely haven't seen the last of this, and I have no idea. We've got 3 episodes left of season 2. But before we wrap up really quickly, do either of you think we're in danger of getting too much non-Mandalorian stuff? I mean, almost every episode this season, maybe even the second one as well, it's always been about a new character that becomes sort of a sidekick or sidekicks to Din Djarin. Are we getting too much of that? Is there too much in the woods inside baseball stuff where you have to know a lot about Star Wars to enjoy season 2? Or do you think it's just a natural progression of story? Or maybe it's somewhere in the middle? Tessa, we'll start with you on that.
I think it probably is somewhere in the middle. It's a good fan service. And I think, I've actually talked to a lot of people who this was their first time meeting Ahsoka. Mm-hmm. And now they're going back and they're going to watch Clone Wars and they're going to watch Rebels. And so I think it's nice in that respect. But yeah, it's a fine line. And I think it's really in the middle. I think it's real close to getting to be almost too much for some people who don't know stuff, because Like I said, I've talked to a lot of people and they've said, well, I feel like I need to know Ahsoka now to really get this episode, get the full emotions and all that from this episode. If they don't know Ahsoka, I mean, she's really cool and she's awesome, but they don't get it. You know what I mean?
I do. I think that's well said. Dennis, obviously, Star Wars is about world building and expanding the mythology and introducing new characters and showing connections between characters. But this show is called The Mandalorian. It's not The Brave and the Bold or Mandalorian and Friends or the Super Friends. Where do you agree with Tess? We're kind of somewhere in the middle, or where do you think we're at with this?
Okay, first, that was really well said. Second, I'm fine with this. I think we're in the middle on it. I am fine with the Mandalorian being our lens into the wider galaxy, that he is taking us from place to place. Mm-hmm. We're meeting new characters. He's having these adventures. It's Odyssey-like in that he's got a quest. He's got an endpoint that he's trying to reach. But then we are taken on these side trips from time to time where he helps a Jedi, where he helps a magistrate on Navarro, where he helps a marshal on Tatooine. And he is part of these other stories. He's becoming something of a legend in that regard. And yeah, the show is The Mandalorian, but every single one of these episodes have him in it. It's not like he's not a part of the episode. So I think it's a happy medium on that.
Yeah, I love it. See, I knew there was a good reason to have the two of you on for this episode. Fantastic. Yeah, I think it's unclear and unfair to accurately sort of decide that now. I mean, are they trying to set up for other things, other shows? Possibly. I mean, but isn't that all what we want anyway? I mean, don't we want more of the Mandalorian in this world? As long as the focus is always on Din Djarin, and there may be other people that cross his path, and that's good and that's well. But season 1 didn't need that. It just sort of happened organically. And I feel like Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau and Kathleen Kennedy have given us enough reason to trust them. I mean, this is one of the top streaming shows of all time. It's in the Nielsen top 10. It's fabulous. It's well done. It's done by people who love Star Wars and love storytelling. And we get to see the evolution of these characters in a nice, slow, steady pace that has big, big payoffs. With just 3 episodes left, you can be sure that on Coffee with Kenobi, we'll be breaking down each and every episode.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are, with Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is... yes.
That's going to do it for this week's show. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to have a cup of coffee with me and for helping to spread the word about our Star Wars family we've got here at Coffee with Kenobi. Be sure to tune in Monday nights at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live at www.coffeewithkenobi.com/live or www.facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi and have a cup of coffee, tea, or any beverage of your choosing with me as we continue the conversation. To join us in the CWK Cafe, which is our Facebook group, and share your Star Wars thoughts, comments, reviews, and opinions in a family-friendly, spoiler-free place that is also drama-free, go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/community and be part of the conversation, talk about this week's show, or just talk about some Star Wars. It is a lot of fun, and you'll make some new friends as well as catch up with longtime friends along the way. I also want to thank all of the new and longtime members of the CWK Alliance and let you know how much I appreciate your help and encouragement. A big thank you to our CWK Alliance members, Mary Perdue, Jason Hall, Dennis Keithley, Ross Hollowin, Cato McNichol, Alexander Moylan, Jim Capron, Smooth Rivera, Tyler Pompa, Frank Mulder, Colby Mead, LJ Souter, Daz Davies, Dustin Mills, Robert Avila, Terry King, Jeff Ellis, David Nicely, Chris Gavarka, Angela Sauce, Aaron Harris, Greg McLaughlin, Eric Struthers, Christine Turk, Brian McKinney, Alex Procasio, Hannah, Susan Gray, Ian Thompson, Dan Ream, Christian Dale, JC Poe, Ed Kimoto, Blake Weaver, Chelsea Sansbury, Yancey Evans, Craig Hargrove, Chris Metz, Connie Shee, Mark Suter, Jared Cantor, Kurt McKellen, Thea Selby, and Simbat Defterdarian. If you want to join the CWK Alliance, be sure to go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/CWK Alliance and sign up today. Not only will you help out Coffee with Kenobi, but you also get access to CWK Portwork, the exclusive weekly podcast not heard anywhere else. It's a great way to support and help out the show, and 10% of your monthly contributions go directly to the St. Jude Children's Hospital to support the incredibly important work they are doing to help these brave children and their families. Plus, contributors at the CWK All-Star level can watch a video podcast of CWK Pour Over, hosted by me, Tom Gross, and Corey Clubb. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. In addition to being part of the community on Facebook, please don't forget to visit our website at www.coffeewithkenobi.com for Star Wars news, announcements, reviews, live video, and so much more. If you have a question for me or just want to share your thoughts on the air, please feel free to reach out to me at danz@coffeewithkenobi.com, and I'll share them on the show. You can also connect with me on Twitter at Mr. Zer, MRZEHR. There are also a lot of ways to connect with me and Coffee with Kenobi on social media. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Give us a like on Facebook at facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi, and check us out on Pinterest. You can find me twice a month on the podcast Looking at Lucasfilm, part of the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network, and you can find my writing on CWK's website, as well as StarWars.com, where I'm an official blogger there, as well as on IGN, where I contribute articles on Star Wars, as well as other popular culture topics. And if you're considering starting a podcast or a blog, let me know how I can help you get started and help you make your creative vision a reality. Be sure to check out danzmedia.com and we can get the process started. I'm also available to come to your school, conference, business, or organization to talk about how to tap into your strengths and help you bring out your very best. You can take that first step into a larger world. Thanks as always to our CWK sponsors, especially MEI and Mouse Fan Travel, our travel partner and your one-stop shop for all things Walt Disney World, Disneyland, the Disney Cruise Lines, or anywhere on the planet. Please go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel to book your magical vacation and help support Coffee with Kenobi in the process. And don't forget to pre-order my brand new book that I wrote alongside Pablo Hidalgo and Cole Horton, the Star Wars book published by DK. Be sure to pre-order your copy of the Star Wars book today. I can't wait to share it with each and every one of you. If you like the show, please tweet out that you're listening, share it on Facebook, or invite your friends and family to tune in and share a cup of coffee with us. And if the Force is especially with you, please take a couple of minutes to rate and review the show on iTunes or Google Podcasts. Every review makes a huge difference and helps to spread the word. Go to iTunes and search Coffee with Kenobi and you'll see the show there. My circle of friends has grown so much because of this podcast and each and every one of you, and it means so much to me that we have such a wonderful Star Wars community. Thank you all so much for all you do. I want to thank both of you so very, very much for coming on Coffee with Kenobi. Dennis, it's always great to have you, and Tessa, you were great. You certainly are more than welcome to come back anytime. Please, Tessa, let everybody know where they can reach you, ask you a question, just say hello, and hear all of your great work.
Yeah, you can check me out at mamasgeeky.com and Mamas Geeky on every single social media, especially YouTube.
And Dennis, what about you?
Well, I co-host Podcast Artists with my friend Jay Krebs, where we have 3 shows a week talking about Star Wars news, reviews, discussion. And you can find that on your podcatcher of choice. You can follow the show on any social media platform at Podcast Artists. And if you want to reach out to me on Twitter, I am at DJKVER2.
Thanks again to Tessa and Dennis for joining me this week to talk about the Jedi. Again, what an exciting episode with a lot to unpack, a lot to process. And I'm loving seeing the conversations on both sides of the fence. I mean, the polarizing nature of it is actually good because it opens up dialogue and conversation, and it doesn't get much better than talking Star Wars with each and every one of you. If you want to do it even more directly, then be sure to join me Monday nights at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, where we always give our top 5 favorite moments from the most recent episode of The Mandalorian. And then once the series is over for this season, we'll jump into other Star Wars topics as well. Have a great week and weekend, everybody, and remember, this is the podcast you're looking for.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here.